The auction hall buzzed with the sound of voices raised in fierce bidding traders, mercenaries, and salvagers, all desperate to get their hands on the wreckage of war, some looking for profit, others for survival, and a few like Cole just looking for a chance to finally break free from a life of scraping by he had spent years fixing other people's ships, watching them fly off into the stars, while he remained stranded on the same dusty colony world with nothing but broken dreams and an empty wallet. But today was different. Today, he had just enough credits saved up for a ship of his own, and he wasn't leaving without one. The auctioneer stood on a raised platform, his voice booming through the speakers as he listed off each ship, its specs, its history, its flaws. Bidders shouted over each other, fighting for the best vessels, the sleekest fighters, the most powerful freighters, but Cole knew he couldn't compete with them. He had his eyes on the back of the lot, where the real rejects were kept. Ships. No one wanted ships that had too much damage, too much history. Then it appeared, a massive shadow looming over the other rusted hulks, a Zarek Dominion warship, its dark hull covered in battle scars, its sleek alien design still imposing even in its ruined state. The auctioneer barely glanced at it as he rattled off the details. Former Dominion cruiser, salvaged from the Battle of Vaughn Prime, heavily damaged, classified tech, removed, no active systems, minimal functional weapons, lot number 73. Bidding starts at 5,000 credits. Silence spread through the crowd. No one moved, no one raised a hand. Dominion ships were bad news, impossible to maintain, filled with tech that humans barely understood, and often locked with security measures that could turn them into death traps. A few scavengers whispered among themselves, but no one bid. Cole's heart pounded. This was his chance. He lifted his hand. 5,000 credits. The auctioneer barely looked up from his list. Any other bidders? Nothing. Going once, going twice. Sold lot 73 to bidder 1712. Cole let out a breath. He hadn't realized he was holding the ship was his own ship. As the auction moved on, he made his way to the shipyards, stepping through rows of broken vessels until he stood before it up close. It was even more intimidating. The hull was dark metal, smooth and cold to the touch, faint traces of old Dominion markings still visible along the sides. He found the control panel near the boarding ramp and activated the manual override. After a few seconds of grinding metal and flickering lights, the ramp lowered with a deep mechanical groan. Stepping inside, the air was stale, the ship silent except for the hum of emergency power lights flickered, casting long shadows over the walls. The design was unfamiliar, sleek alien curves mixed with harsh angular controls, Dominion engineering at its finest. The bridge was dark, its consoles covered in alien script. But he would figure it out. He had worked on plenty of hybrid ships before. If he could get the main systems running, he could reprogram the interface, retrofit it for human use. Then he heard it. A breath. Soft, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Cole spun around, his pulse hammering the shadows, shifted. Something moved in the darkness. Then the lights flared to life and he saw her. She was chained to the command chair, shackles binding her wrists and ankles, her violet skin shimmering under the dim lights, her silver eyes locking onto him with pure hatred. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, tangled and unkempt. Her breathing was ragged, but her presence was undeniable. She wasn't just some prisoner, she was something else, something dangerous. "Who dares enter my prison?" Her voice was hoarse, but filled with venom. Cole took a step back, hands raised in instinctual defense. I just bought this ship. I didn't know anyone was in here." Her expression didn't change. She flexed her wrists, testing the restraints as if she could break them with sheer will alone. The ship was still in partial lockdown, which meant she had been trapped here for a long time. No food, no water, nothing keeping her alive except whatever Dominion tech was still running in the background. "You made a mistake, human," she hissed, her silver eyes glowing brighter for a moment. Then the ship shuddered beneath them. Cole barely had time to react as the control panels around them flickered on warnings, flashing in a language he couldn't read. The engines roared to life, a surge of power rushing through the ship. As it prepared for takeoff, the ramp slammed shut, locking him inside as the ship sealed itself. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted, spinning to the controls, trying to override whatever had been triggered. She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You wanted this ship, human, now you die with it." Cole's hands flew over the console, trying to make sense of the flashing alien symbols. The ship trembled beneath him, its engines roaring louder warning lights bathed the bridge in red, and his heart pounded as he realized this wasn't just a simple startup sequence. The ship was preparing for an emergency jump, and he had no idea where it was going. He turned back to the woman still shackled to the chair, her glowing silver eyes locked onto him with cold amusement. Despite her restraints, she didn't look worried at all. If anything, she looked like she had already accepted whatever was about to happen. "Stop this now," he shouted. "I don't know what kind of death wish you have, but I didn't sign up for it. I bought this ship fair and square." She tilted her head, watching him as if he were a fool. Her voice was calm, but carried an edge of mockery. "You bought a Dominion warship, human. Did you think it would just let you walk in and take control without consequences?" Cole clenched his jaw, ignoring her as he pressed every button he could, trying to shut down the launch sequence. But nothing worked. The ship was overriding every command as if it had a mind of its own. Suddenly, the ship jerked violently, the artificial gravity stuttering as it lifted off the ground. Cole stumbled, catching himself against the control panel outside. Through the viewport, he saw the auction yard falling away below them, figures scattering in panic as the massive vessel lifted into the dark sky, engines burning hotter. He gritted his teeth. If he didn't stop this now, they would be in open space within minutes, and wherever this ship was planning to go, he wasn't ready to find out. He spun back to the woman. "Tell me how to stop this now." She only smiled again. "You can't." Cole growled in frustration, grabbing the emergency override panel on the side of the bridge. With a quick movement, he yanked open the casing, revealing a series of alien circuits and power nodes. He had worked on enough ships to know that sometimes the fastest way to stop a runaway vessel was to cut the power directly. Before she could react, he ripped out the main connection. The ship screamed. Not a mechanical noise, not a simple system failure. It was a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the walls, through his bones, through his skull, as if the ship itself was alive and furious. For a brief moment, he thought he had done it. The engines sputtered, the lights flickered, then everything went dark. Silence. Then a low hum started building. Cole barely had time to register what was happening before the ship exploded back to life, every system roaring online at full capacity. The force of it sent him flying across the bridge, slamming into the far wall. He groaned, shaking off the impact as he realized his mistake. Whatever he had just done had triggered a failsafe. Instead of shutting the ship down, he had activated something worse. The woman finally looked concerned. For the first time, she glanced at the controls, her expression darkening. "You just activated the ship's emergency override protocol." Cole pulled himself up, wiping blood from his lip. "And what exactly does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, her gaze locking onto his as the ship trembled again, "that we are now on a direct course to Dominion space, and nothing can stop it." His stomach dropped. That wasn't possible. The ship couldn't possibly have enough fuel to make a jump that far. He was about to argue when the space outside the viewport shifted, twisting into a tunnel of blinding light. They had already jumped. Cole's breath came in quick gasps. He had lost control of his own ship before he had even set foot in it, and now he was being dragged straight into the heart of enemy territory. He turned back to the woman, who was now watching him with something new in her eyes, not amusement, not mockery, but curiosity, as if she was finally interested in what he would do next. He exhaled, forcing himself to stay calm. "All right, tell me exactly who you are and why this ship is so determined to bring you back." She hesitated just for a second, then she spoke. "My name is Lissari, and this ship is not just any Dominion warship. It was my ship, my prison. And now, thanks to you, it is taking us both to the one place you never wanted to go." Cole stared at her, his mind racing. His ship, no, not his ship, her ship was locked on a course straight into Dominion space. He was trapped with an alien woman who clearly had more control over the situation than she was letting on, and he had no idea how to stop what was coming. He pushed himself off the wall, his muscles aching from the impact. The emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the bridge. He had to think fast. The Dominion was not known for its mercy. If they landed in their territory, he would be executed or worse. He moved back to the control panel, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. There had to be a way to regain control, override the autopilot, force the ship to drop out of hyperspace. Anything but every command was denied every function, locked out. The ship was rejecting him completely. His frustration boiled over, and he slammed his fist against the console. "Tell me how to stop this right now." Lazari tilted her head, the faintest hint of a smirk touching her lips. "You can't." Cole turned to her, his anger barely held in check. "Then why don't you tell me what exactly is waiting for us at the end of this jump? Because if I'm going to die, I would at least like to know what is going to kill me." She studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether he was even worth explaining things to. Then she exhaled and spoke. "This ship was a prototype built for high-level Dominion officers outfitted with experimental technology. It was never meant to be captured, never meant to be used by anyone outside the Dominion. When it was taken out of commission, it was supposed to be destroyed, but instead it was locked down and left to rot until someone like you came along and woke it up." Cole frowned, his mind putting the pieces together. "So what you are saying is this ship still thinks it is on a mission?" Lazari nodded, "And its mission is to return to Dominion space at all costs." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to suppress the rising panic. "All right, fine. So if the ship is locked into this mission, how do we break it? You were the officer assigned to it. You must know something." She narrowed her eyes. "You assume much, human. I was not just an officer, I was its commander." Cole froze, the realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just some random prisoner he had found in his ship. This was a high-ranking Dominion leader, someone important, someone powerful. No wonder the ship had activated the moment it detected her. No wonder the Dominion had a failsafe to bring it home. He took a slow step closer, his voice low. "So tell me, Commander Lazari, why exactly were you locked up in your own ship?" Her silver eyes darkened. "That is none of your concern." Cole let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I think it is very much my concern, seeing as I am stuck on a one-way trip to whatever fate you left behind. So unless you want to be captured too, I suggest you start talking." For the first time, something flickered in her expression, something close to hesitation. But it was gone in an instant. She straightened. "The Dominion does not tolerate failure. I was accused of treason and sentenced to die. When the war ended, the humans took this ship as a trophy. But they never realized what it was carrying me, and now thanks to you they will get what they wanted." After all, Cole clenched his fists. He didn't know what was worse, the fact that he had bought a ship with an alien war criminal inside, or the fact that he had just delivered himself straight into enemy hands without even realizing it. He shook his head. "No way, I am not accepting that. There has to be a way to break the lockout." Lazari studied him for a long moment, then finally said, "There is one way, but you will not like it." "At this point, I will take any chance over just waiting to die," Cole shot back. She tilted her head. "If we destroy the navigation core before we reach Dominion space, the ship will be forced to drop out of hyperspace. But that will leave us stranded in the void, and if we fail, the ship may activate its self-destruct sequence rather than let us interfere with its orders." Cole swallowed hard. "Well, that is just fantastic, but I would rather take my chances in deep space than gift-wrap myself for the Dominion. Tell me where the nav core is and let's blow it to hell." Lazari looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me, human. But know this, if you betray me, I will kill you before this ship ever gets the chance." Cole followed Lazari through the dimly lit corridors of the ship, his footsteps echoing against the cold metal walls. Emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows as they moved. The air was stale, thick, with the scent of old machinery and something else, something metallic and bitter, like the memory of a long-forgotten war. The ship hummed around them, a low, vibrating pulse that sent chills down his spine. It felt alive, not in the way a machine should, but in a way that made his skin crawl, as if it was watching them, listening, waiting for them to make a mistake. Lazari walked ahead, her movements controlled, precise. Even with the shackles still locked around her wrists, she moved like a warrior, her muscles coiled, her silver eyes scanning every corner, every darkened doorway. Cole knew, without a doubt, that if she wanted to kill him, she would, and there would be nothing he could do to stop it. "Where is this nav core?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Deep in the engineering sector, she said the ship was designed so that no single officer could access all of its systems at once. It's a security measure meant to prevent sabotage. Unfortunately for us, that means getting to the nav core will not be easy. Cole sighed. Figures, let me guess, we have to fight through some Dominion death traps just to get there. She shot him a look, something close to amusement. If you are lucky, it will be just death traps. Great, just what I wanted, he muttered. As they moved deeper into the ship, the hallways grew darker, the walls narrowing, as if the ship itself was closing in on them. Consoles flickered to life as they passed alien script, scrolling across screens too fast for Cole to read. Warning systems coming online, silently acknowledging their presence. Then the ship spoke. Unauthorized access detected. Navigation override attempt in progress. Countermeasures engaged. The lights flared red, an alarm blaring through the ship. The floor beneath them shuddered, and Cole barely had time to brace himself before the first defense system activated. Gun turrets dropped from the ceiling, their sleek barrels gleaming. As they locked onto their targets, Cole threw himself against the wall. Just as the first shots fired, streaks of plasma slicing through the air, narrowly missing him. Lizari didn't flinch. She moved with terrifying speed, twisting away from the gunfire, her shackles sparking against the walls as she spun around a corner out of sight. Cole cursed under his breath, grabbing the nearest panel and yanking it open. Wires spilled out, a mess of alien circuitry. If he could disable the power to this section, maybe he could shut down the turrets before they turned him into vapor. Harry, human, Lizari called, her voice sharp as more turrets deployed from the ceiling. We do not have time for your slow reflexes. I'm working on it, he growled, his fingers flying over the wires. He didn't have a map, he didn't have a manual, but he had instinct, and right now that was all he needed. He grabbed a handful of wires, took a deep breath, and yanked. The ship let out a high-pitched screech, and then the turrets powered down, their barrels lowering as the energy drained from them. The hallway was silent again, except for the distant hum of the ship. Cole let out a breath of relief and turned the corner, finding Lizari watching him with an unreadable expression. Not bad for a human, she said. Yeah, well, I am full of surprises, he muttered. Come on before the ship throws something worse at us. They pushed forward, moving faster now, every step bringing them closer to the core. The ship was fighting them, but it was also predictable. It had been designed for war, not for betrayal. It had no defense against the unexpected, and that was exactly what Cole intended to use against it. Finally, they reached the engineering sector, a massive chamber lined with pulsating conduits. The nav core sat at the center, a towering structure of glowing energy cables running from it like veins, stretching into the walls. Power thrummed through it, a constant steady beat like a heartbeat. Cole stepped forward, then stopped. Something was wrong. Lizari stiffened beside him, her silver eyes narrowing as she scanned the room. She sensed it too. They were not alone. From the shadows, figures emerged, humanoid, but wrong, their bodies twisted metal fused with organic flesh, their movements jerky, unnatural. Dominion security drones, except these were not normal. They had been left behind, abandoned for years. Their programming degraded, their bodies warped into something monstrous. Cole swallowed hard. Tell me these things have an off switch. Lizari exhaled, drawing herself into a defensive stance. Only if you kill them first. The drones moved, the lights of the nav core reflecting in their hollow, lifeless eyes, and then they attacked. Cole barely had time to react before the first drone lunged at him, its metal limbs wiring, its movements unnatural, fast like a predator that had long forgotten what it meant to be human. He ducked just as a bladed arm slashed through the air, inches from his head, sparks flying as it carved into the metal wall behind him. Lizari was already moving, shackles still bound to her wrists, but her body a blur of speed. She twisted, dodging another drone, her foot snapping up with brutal precision, cracking the machine's head backward, its glowing red eyes flickering as it crashed to the floor. But more were coming, their mechanical bodies creaking, their skeletal frames moving with eerie purpose. Cole scrambled back, his eyes darting around for anything he could use as a weapon. He was not a soldier, not a fighter. He was a mechanic, and mechanics used tools. He spotted a loose conduit pipe along the wall, ripped it free, and swung it hard, catching the nearest drone across the head. The impact sent it staggering back, But it was not enough. These things did not feel pain, they did not hesitate. Lazari's voice cut through the chaos. Do not waste time, human. The nav core is our priority. Tell that to the damn murderbots. Cole snapped back as another drone lunged. He swung again, hitting its legs, knocking it off balance, but it clawed at him, dragging him down to the floor, its cold metal fingers tightening around his throat. He gasped, struggling, kicking, trying to pry it off, but it was too strong. Then a sharp crack filled the air, and suddenly the weight was gone. Lazari stood above him, 1 foot planted on the drone's body, her shackles now covered in thin energy filaments, sparking with residual power. She could use them like a weapon, like a whip, severing the drone's head from its body. She offered him a hand. You are slow, she said flatly. Cole coughed, shoving her hand away. I am human, excuse me, if I do not fight like a damn war machine. She ignored him already, turning back to the nav core. More drones were rising, their damaged bodies twitching, but their mission was clear: protect the core at all costs. If they did not move fast, the ship would never let them finish what they started. Lazari moved first, dodging another drone, her foot slamming into its chest, sending it skidding across the floor. Before she reached the core, her hands hovering over the controls, the alien script pulsing beneath her fingers. It was a complex system built to resist sabotage, but she knew it. She had commanded this ship. She could break it from within. Cole fought his way to her, his makeshift weapon dented and cracked, but still holding. He could hear the ship's alarm rising, its voice cold and mechanical as it warned them over and over. Unauthorized access detected, countermeasures deploying, ship integrity compromised. Hurry up, Cole gritted his teeth, slamming the pipe into another drone, its head caving in with a sickening crunch. We do not have time for this. Lazari's eyes flickered silver, her fingers moving faster across the controls. I am overriding the security protocol, but the ship is resisting. I need more power. Cole scanned the room, spotting a power junction along the far wall. If he could reroute energy to her terminal, she might be able to force a shutdown, but getting there meant crossing the battlefield. Cover me, he shouted, already moving before she could argue. Drones swarmed toward him, sensing his intention. But he did not stop. He dodged, weaved, barely avoiding grasping claws and wiring blades. He reached the junction, ripped open the panel wires, spilling out in a tangled mess. He had no time for precision, no time to figure out the right connection. He just had to overload it. He grabbed 2 exposed wires, gritting his teeth as a jolt of energy surged through his arms, sparks flying. The ship groaned around him, the lights flickering, dimming for a second, then flaring back to life. Lazari seized the moment, her fingers pressing the final command. The nav core let out a high-pitched wail, the glow of its energy turning unstable. The ship shuddered, a violent tremor rocking through the floor. Navigation override, successful, emergency disengage initiated. Cole stumbled back, breathing hard, watching as the nav core's light flickered, dimmed, then went dark. The drones around them twitched, their bodies seizing up, collapsing as their connection to the ship severed. For a long moment, there was only silence, then the ship's voice spoke again. Emergency drop from hyperspace, commencing caution, abrupt deceleration may cause structural damage. Cole's stomach lurched, the air around them vibrating as the ship was forcibly yanked from hyperspace. The sudden stop sent him crashing to the ground. Lazari barely managed to stay upright, her hands gripping the console as the ship twisted, shuddered, then finally stilled. Cole groaned, rolling onto his back, breathing hard. Tell me we are not dead. Lazari exhaled, looking up at the main display outside the viewport. The swirling tunnel of hyperspace was gone, replaced by the vast empty void of space, a distant star burning in the distance. We are not dead, she said, but we are stranded. Cole pulled himself up, every muscle in his body aching. The ship was silent, the hum of its systems now a low flickering murmur, as if it was wounded. He looked at Lazari, who stood by the darkened nav core, her silver eyes scanning the interface, her expression unreadable. Well, we are not dead, Cole muttered, but we are stuck in the middle of nowhere with a ship that probably hates us, and no idea where we actually are. Tell me, Lazari, does this count as a victory? She glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. We are not prisoners of the Dominion, so yes, it is a victory, however temporary. Cole sighed, rubbing his face, and looked at the main display. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. The ship had dropped them out of hyperspace, but he had no clue where they had ended up, if they were even close to any known systems. "All right, genius," he said, turning to Lizari. "Tell me you have some kind of backup plan, because I did not sign up to die floating in the void." Lizari studied the controls for a moment, then tilted her head. "There may be a way the ship still has emergency thrusters and short-range systems operational. If we can access navigation manually, we may be able to locate a nearby planet or station." "That is a big if," Cole muttered. She nodded. "But I assume you would rather try than sit here and wait for death." Cole sighed again. "Why do I feel like that is my only option? Fine, where do we start?" Lizari turned toward the main console, but before she could speak, the ship's lights flickered again, a low groan vibrating through the metal floor, and then a voice, cold, mechanical, but different from before. "Unauthorized interference detected. Emergency failsafe engaged. Initializing distress beacon." Cole's stomach dropped to distress beacon. What the hell? Why would it activate that? Lizari's expression darkened because it is programmed to alert Dominion forces in the event of a critical failure. The ship assumes it has been sabotaged and is calling for retrieval. Cole ran a hand through his hair. "Great, fantastic. So we just sent out a big flashing signal saying, 'Hey, come pick us up.' How long until someone answers?" Lizari moved quickly, scanning the data. "It depends on our location. If we are within range of a Dominion patrol, they could arrive within hours. If we are lucky, it could take days." Cole swore under his breath. "And if we are really lucky, no one comes at all." "Unlikely," she said flatly. "Dominion technology is too valuable. They will send someone." Cole paced the room, his mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. If they stayed put, the Dominion would find them, and he had no doubt what they would do to him and Lizari, so running was the only option, but without a working nav system, they had nowhere to go. Unless... Wait, Cole turned back to Lizari. "You said short-range systems are still operational. Does that include scanning?" Lizari frowned slightly. "Yes, but I do not see how that helps. If we can find anything out there, a planet, a derelict ship, hell, even an asteroid with enough resources to hide in, we might be able to shut down the distress beacon and disappear before the Dominion shows up." Lizari considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Logically sound, assuming there is anything nearby." "Well, we are about to find out," Cole muttered, moving to the console. He was no expert in alien tech, but he had learned enough from tinkering with the ship's systems to at least attempt a scan. He activated the short-range sensors, waiting as they pulsed out into the void, searching. Come on, give me something," he whispered. The screen flickered, data, scrolling too fast for him to read. Then a single ping appeared. "Contact detected," Lizari said, her voice suddenly sharper. Cole's eyes locked on the display. It was faint, barely registering against the background radiation, but it was there, a structure, a ship, maybe something massive but cold, lifeless, drifting. "What is it?" he asked. Lizari studied the readings. "It is old, very old, no energy signatures, minimal heat output, possibly derelict. But its hull is intact. We could use it for cover, maybe even salvage something useful." Cole exhaled. "Okay, I will take it. Better than nothing." "How far?" "Several thousand kilometers. We have enough thruster power to reach it within an hour." Cole nodded, then glanced at the interface again. Another thought creeping into his mind. "Wait, if we found this thing with our scanners, does that mean the Dominion can find it too?" Lizari hesitated, then her expression hardened. "If they arrive soon, yes. If we reach it first, we may be able to disable our signal before they notice." Cole clenched his jaw. "All right, then let's move before we run out of time." Lizari activated the thrusters. The ship groaned as it began to drift toward the distant object. Cole stared at the screen, watching the faint blip grow closer. Whatever was out there, it was their best chance at survival. He just hoped it was not already occupied. The ship drifted through the void, its emergency thrusters firing in short bursts, guiding them toward the derelict structure. Cole gripped the edge of the console, watching the faint blip on the scanner grow larger. Whatever this thing was, it had been floating out here for a long time. Its hull was scarred, pitted with damage, but still intact. Lazari stood beside him, her silver eyes fixed on the display. She had not spoken much since they started moving, her focus sharp, her body tense, like she was waiting for something, waiting for the worst. As they got closer, details began to emerge. The structure was massive, larger than their own ship, its design unfamiliar, long curved spires stretching outward, its dark metallic surface reflecting the dim light of a distant star. "That is not Dominion tech," Cole muttered. "What the hell is this thing?" Lazari narrowed her eyes. "No, it is not Dominion. It is older, much older. Older than the Dominion." Cole frowned. "How old are we talking?" She glanced at him. "I do not know, but if it has remained intact for this long, then it may still hold value." Cole exhaled. "Great. So either we find something useful, or we step into an ancient death trap. Sounds about right for my luck." Lazari ignored him, instead focusing on the controls. "We are close enough to dock. I will attempt a soft landing." Cole nodded, stepping back as she guided the ship into position, the docking clamps extending toward the structure. As they latched onto the outer hull, there was a jolt, a deep metallic groan as their ship connected, then silence. "Well," Cole muttered, "no turning back now." Lazari moved to the airlock, overriding the security protocol. The doors hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor stretching into the depths of the structure. The air was stale, heavy with dust, and something else, something faintly metallic. Cole stepped forward, peering into the darkness. "Great. No lights, no gravity, and no idea what is waiting for us inside." Lazari lifted her wrist, her shackles flickering with energy. "I will take points, stay close." "Not arguing with that," Cole muttered, following her inside, his boots clanking softly against the metal floor as he adjusted to the zero gravity. The walls were covered in strange markings, alien script that pulsed faintly like veins running through the ship. Lazari ran her fingers over them, her expression unreadable. "This language is unfamiliar, but it resembles ancient warship designs I've encountered before." Warship. Cole swallowed. "Great, just great." They moved deeper into the structure, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The corridors were wide, cavernous, as if designed for beings much larger than humans, or even Dominion soldiers. The deeper they went, the more unsettling it became. Then the ship spoke. A low whisper, a voice that was not mechanical, but something else, something old. It echoed through the halls, a language neither of them understood yet. Somehow it sent chills down Cole's spine. What the hell was that? He whispered, his grip tightening on his makeshift weapon. Lazari's eyes flickered. "Something is still active here." "Active as in still running, or active as in still alive?" Cole asked. She did not answer. Instead, she pressed forward, her posture rigid. They reached a large chamber, its walls lined with strange crystalline structures. Glowing faintly in the darkness in the center stood a massive console, its surface covered in more of the alien script. Cole exhaled. "Okay, so what are the odds this thing still works?" Lazari stepped forward, examining the interface. After a moment, she pressed her hand against it, and the entire room lit up, the glow spreading across the walls like fire racing through dry wood. Cole stumbled back. "Holy hell, what did you do?" "I activated it," she said simply. "Yeah, I got that, but what exactly did you activate?" Before she could answer, the voice returned louder this time. The walls trembled, and suddenly the ship was no longer lifeless. The floor beneath them shifted, the air grew warmer, lights flickered to life, and then in the shadows something moved. Cole's heart pounded. "Tell me that was just a system reboot." Lazari's hand went to her shackles, her muscles tensed. "No, something else is waking up." A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, its body sleek and metallic, its form humanoid, but clearly not organic. Glowing lines ran across its frame, pulsing like a heartbeat. It turned its head toward them, its eyes igniting with a piercing white light. Cole felt his breath hitch. "Okay, I'm officially voting for running." The figure took a step forward, its voice low, resonating through the chamber in that same ancient language, but this time Cole understood. "Intruders identified, state your purpose." Lazari straightened, her tone unwavering. "We seek refuge and knowledge." There was a long silence, then the figure spoke again. "You are not authorized." Then it lunged. The figure moved faster than Cole thought possible, its metallic frame Barely making a sound as it lunged, Lizari reacted instantly, her shackles flaring with energy as she twisted out of the way, her foot snapping up in a brutal kick that should have sent the thing staggering, but the figure barely flinched. Instead, its arm shot out, grabbing her wrist with an iron grip. Cole barely had time to think. He just moved. Instinct took over. He swung his metal pipe, aiming for the thing's head. The impact rang out like striking solid steel, but the figure did not even turn, its grip tightening around Lizari's wrist. Her face twisted in pain, but she did not hesitate. Her free hand lashed out, the energy from her shackles sparking against the figure's chest. For a brief second, it flickered like something inside it was struggling to react. Then it released her, stepping back, its glowing eyes flashing rapidly. Cole grabbed her arm, pulling her back as he whispered, "What the hell is this thing?" Lizari shook her head, breathing hard. "I do not know, but it is not entirely mechanical. There is something else, something deeper inside it." The figure straightened its head, tilting slightly as if reassessing them. Its voice echoed through the chamber once more. "Unauthorized presence detected. State your purpose or be terminated." Lizari clenched her fists, forcing her breathing to steady. "We seek knowledge of this vessel and refuge from Dominion forces. If you possess intelligence, you will recognize that we are not a threat." Cole shot her a glance. "Okay, that is one way to go." The figure remained still, its glowing lines pulsing as if considering their words. Then it spoke again. "This vessel is classified. All intruders must be removed." Cole cursed under his breath. "Yeah, that is a no then." Before the figure could move again, Lizari acted, her hands darting toward the console she had activated earlier, her fingers moving over the strange script, the symbols pulsed, flickering erratically as if reacting to her touch. The figure snapped its head toward her, stepping forward, but before it could attack, the entire chamber shuddered, the walls groaning as if the ship itself was responding. Cole staggered back. "Okay, tell me you did not just wake up something worse." Lizari did not answer, her eyes locked on the console. Whatever she had done, the ship was reacting, its walls shifting, the dim glow turning into a deep, ominous red. The figure took a step back as well, its body stiffening as a new sound filled the air, a voice deeper, older. "System override detected, identifying command signature." Lizari's hands trembled. "This ship, it is trying to recognize me." Cole frowned. "How the hell would it recognize you?" She did not answer. The ship's voice spoke again. "Access partially granted. Entity Lizari identified. Genetic markers align with secondary command tier, awaiting further verification." Cole's eyes widened. "Wait, what does that mean?" Lizari exhaled slowly. "It means this ship recognizes me as someone with some level of authority, not full control, but enough to possibly keep us alive." The figure in front of them remained still, its glowing eyes flickering again as if processing the new information. Cole swallowed hard. "Okay, so does that mean it will stop trying to kill us?" Lizari turned toward the figure, her voice firm. "The ship acknowledges my command. Stand down." The figure hesitated, then, after what felt like an eternity, it straightened its posture, its glowing lines shifting from a harsh white to a softer blue. "Command acknowledged, parameters updated, awaiting further directives." Cole let out a breath. He had not realized he was holding. "Okay, I take it back, that was impressive." Lizari turned to him, her face unreadable. "We are not safe yet." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "Of course we are not, so what now?" She looked back at the console. "If this ship still has functional systems, I may be able to use them to disable our distress signal. If I can do that, we have a chance at avoiding Dominion detection." Cole nodded. "Sounds like a plan, but what about that thing?" He motioned to the figure, who remained perfectly still, its gaze locked on them. Lizari hesitated, then turned to it. "Your designation." The figure's voice was a motionless primary sentinel unit, tasked with ship security and operational integrity. Cole folded his arms. "Well, that explains the whole trying to kill us part." Lizari's expression darkened. "If you acknowledge my command, does that mean you will assist us?" The sentinel's glowing eyes flickered again. "Assistance is conditional. Primary directives cannot be compromised. This vessel must not fall to hostile forces." Cole rubbed his temples. "Okay, so let's break this down. If the Dominion shows up and tries to take the ship, you are gonna fight them, right?" Affirmative. And if we try to take control of the ship, you're gonna fight us too. There was a pause, then correct. Cole groaned, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Lizari ignored him, instead focusing on the console. If we can disable the distress beacon before the Dominion arrives, we may not need to fight at all. Cole exhaled, yeah, because our luck has been so good so far. Lizari's fingers moved over the controls faster now, urgency pressing into every movement. The ship's voice echoed again. Processing override, distress beacon disengaged. Cole blinked, wait, really, that worked? Lizari nodded, but we are still vulnerable. The Dominion may already be en route. Cole rubbed his face, great, so what now? Lizari turned to the Sentinel. If this ship has weapons or defenses, we need to know now. The Sentinel's eyes pulsed. This vessel is incomplete weapons systems, our non-functional core reactor operating at minimal capacity, defense protocols unavailable. Cole threw up his hands, so we just disabled our only chance at calling for backup, and we have no way to fight if someone finds us, great, just great. Lizari turned back to the console. Then we must find another way, because if the Dominion arrives before we are ready, we will not get another chance to escape. Cole felt his pulse hammering against his skull, the weight of their situation sinking deeper. They had no weapons, no defenses, no way to run if the Dominion found them. Their only advantage was the derelict ship itself, and whatever secrets it still held. Lizari stood rigid, her silver eyes locked on the Sentinel, her mind racing faster than she let on. We need options, she said, her voice calm, but firm. This ship is massive. There must be something we can use, something still operational. The Sentinel remained motionless, its glowing eyes flickering, processing its new orders. Then it spoke. Secondary power reserves detected, deep core systems partially intact, restricted areas inaccessible due to structural damage, manual override required to restore additional functionality. Cole let out a breath. Okay, so that means if we can get power back online, we might find something useful, weapon shields, maybe even an FTL drive. Lizari nodded, but we need to reach the core, and the ship's structure may be unstable. Fantastic, Cole muttered. Every step we take could send us plummeting into the void. Love that for us. Lizari ignored him, motioning for the Sentinel. Lead us to the core, we do not have much time. The Sentinel turned without hesitation, its metal frame moving silently through the dimly lit corridors. Cole and Lizari followed, stepping carefully through the ancient ship's labyrinthine pathways. The deeper they went, the stronger the strange hum in the walls became, the sensation vibrating through Cole's bones, like the ship itself was alive. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a massive reinforced door. Lines of alien script ran across its surface, pulsing faintly as if reacting to their presence. This is it, Lizari said, placing her hand against the interface. The ship's voice echoed once more. Core access restricted, manual override required. Cole exhaled. So let me guess, we're going to have to crack this thing open manually. Lizari studied the interface, her expression unreadable. I may be able to force an access link through the ship's command structure if the system still recognizes my genetic markers. Cole crossed his arms. And if it does not? Then we force our way in, she said simply. Cole rubbed his face, because that has worked out so well for us before. Lizari ignored him, her fingers moving across the interface. The alien script shifted, glowing brighter, then flickering erratically. The ship's voice returned deeper, now slower. Verifying command, signature, partial access granted, secondary systems rebooting, caution, structural instability detected. The entire ship shuddered beneath their feet, the lights overhead surging, then dimming again as ancient systems struggled to awaken. Cole grabbed onto the nearest wall. Okay, tell me that was supposed to happen. Lizari was already scanning the data that flooded the interface, her jaw tightening. It is working, but the ship is barely holding together. Power levels are fluctuating. The Sentinel's voice cut through the air, warning, unauthorized vessel detected approaching at high velocity. Cole's stomach dropped. Tell me that is not what I think it is. Lizari's fingers clenched. Dominion forces. They must have tracked our signal before we disabled it. They are almost here. Cole swore under his breath, so much for getting ahead of them. The ship shuddered again as more systems came online, the display flickering with new data. Lizari's eyes locked onto something. There the FTL drive is damaged, but partially operational. We may be able to activate it manually if we reach the engine core. Cole's head snapped up. Wait, are you telling me this ship can still jump? If we can stabilize the drive long enough to execute a short-range jump, yes. Cole let out a breath. Then we better move now before the Dominion boards us. Lazari turned to the Sentinel. Can you defend this ship against an incoming attack? The Sentinel's glowing eyes pulsed. Defensive systems offline. Combat engagement is inadvisable. Primary directive remains vessel security. Great, so we are on our own. Cole muttered. Story of my life. Lazari wasted no time sprinting toward the engine core. The corridors around them trembled as the Dominion ship drew closer, the sound of distant impacts echoing through the hull they were boarding. Cole's heart pounded as they reached the engine chamber. The room was massive, cables and conduits stretching like veins across the walls. The FTL drive sat at the center, a colossal machine pulsing weakly, barely holding together. Lazari ran to the controls, her hands moving with expert precision. I can stabilize it, but we have one shot. If this fails, we are stranded. Cole turned to the door, hearing the distant sound of boots, metal scraping against metal. They are here, Lazari. She did not stop moving. Almost there. The ship's voice echoed again, warning. Unauthorized boarding detected. Hostile entities approaching. Cole gritted his teeth. Then we do not have time for careful. Lazari hit the down switch. Lazari's hands slammed onto the final sequence. The FTL drive roared to life, a deafening hum filling the chamber. The ship vibrated violently as space itself seemed to fold around them. Outside, the Dominion soldiers stormed through the corridors, weapons raised. But before they could fire, reality twisted. The stars blurred, and in an instant the ship was gone, leaving nothing behind but empty void. When the ship finally stabilized, Cole collapsed against the nearest wall, his breath ragged, his limbs shaking. We made it, he exhaled. Lazari stepped back from the controls, her expression still tense. We are not safe yet. The jump was unstable. We need to find out where we ended up. Cole let out a weak laugh. Anywhere that is not crawling with Dominion goons sounds like a win to me. Lazari turned to him, her silver eyes meeting his. Not a win, not yet, but we live to fight another day. Cole sighed, looking up at the flickering lights of the ancient ship. Something told him their fight was just beginning.